Why do organizations employ different approaches to innovation? So think about it for just a minute. Somebody's building ships, and there's lots of complexity and a lot of process in building a ship. So there's a lot of simulations and CAD CAM and a lot of things that have lots of steps to it. Or you're launching a new radical line of feminist beauty products, and you want to have sort of pithy names to powders and lipsticks and stuff. So you're gonna have all kinds of things about color, things about what's sort of a catchy idea right now. And if you start thinking about the strategies people use, the way they hire people, the way in which they measure innovation, the way in which they launch it, when we start looking at the most valuable companies in the world, and particularly the high growth companies in the world, and we ask ourselves what they have in common, the answer is simple. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing that distinguishes the top 25 companies as picked by senior executives. There's 2 or 3 of these studies that are done every year from the rest of the Fortune 500. There's nothing that distinguishes them. So instead of trying to say there's one size, because one size never fits all, we're going to have to talk about what are the various basic approaches to innovation. How are we going to make sense of it? Well, I've got a little prop here for you. This is often referred to as the competing values framework. And it seems very silly. I just have 4 balls here, but I'm going to talk a little bit about these 4 balls. And I want you to follow along because there's really 3 things you need to know about this. The first thing you need to know is that there are 2 axes to this ball. The first axis to the ball is how flexible or rigid is the organization. So if you're really rigid, you're making something that has to be the same every time, like a hamburger, right? Or you're really flexible where something has to be different every time, like your experience at a theater, or your experience with somebody who's trying to come up with a custom way for you to build your website. It's going to be different every time. On the other axis, though, the x-axis here, there's going to be the issue about whether you're facing inside or outside. So part of it's facing inside, making sure we've got the right people and the right kind of culture and the right kind of capability, the right kind of process. And part of it's facing outside. Are we facing the right market? Are we looking for the right customers? Are we capturing the right kind of technologies? So the X and Y axis create some interesting tensions. But there is another set of tensions. And the set of tensions are around the speed and the magnitude of the innovation. So the first tension is about how much innovation do you want? Do you want radical innovation with radical risk? Yeah, that's right. There is no radical innovation with no risk. Think about the experimental drug that's going to save lives. It often comes with a lot of warnings because there's a lot of terrible side effects, but gosh, it's a miracle drug. The other side of that, the other end of that, how much innovation, the magnitude of innovation, is incremental innovation with very little risk. So if we're thinking about how, in fact, we're going to do a surgical procedure or how we're going to bring a spacecraft back to Earth, we don't want radical innovation. We want kind of a turnkey way of doing things. Now, the final continuum is the continuum about speed. So this is magnitude, or how much, how big. This is speed, how fast. There's always going to be a tension between doing things very, very short term, things that often delight the shareholders because this quarter went well, I'm producing revenue, oh, I got into that market first, I was first to market, versus long-term sustainability, developing things that take a long time like culture and relationships and customer identity and all those brands that take a long time to create. So there's a tension between how much and how fast, and a tension between inside, outside, flexible, and stable. Now, if we understand that, we can start looking at the individual colors and how they basically work, and I'll explain this more later. But basically, this is what is often referred to as the forward position, the green or create position. These are the scouts. These are your experimenters. They love to do things first. These are the people who are natural kind of entrepreneurs, and they love to start things. They're not very good at finishing them, but they love to start them. Some organizations that are really, really good at this are famous innovation organizations like Pixar or Apple or a drug company like Genentech, right? The reason they're so good at this is their entire value proposition. What's valuable about them is that they do things first. They're the first mover, right? And what holds these organizations together is vision. And that's why having a visionary in this organization is so important. Well, let's look at the other end of that. Let's look at the incremental innovators, the innovators who have little risk. This is what we're going to call the control position, or the red position, the control position. And the control position does things the right way, right? So think about it for a minute. You know, this is somebody who's making a computer the same way every time. This is somebody who's got a standard procedure for how they're going to put that car together at Toyota. This approach is held together by process, where this approach is held together by vision. Now, I want you to understand something right off the bat. What happens as a result of this is you create quality and efficiency, the elimination of errors, the elimination of deviation. What happens up here is you create radical innovation or breakthrough innovation, and you create new market growth, which is created through variation. So what I want you to understand is this is not just a type issue. It's this form of value destroys this form of value. Let me give you an example. Buy a brand new car, I mean a radical new car, something from one of those exotic European car makers, something that's really brand new. And what happens to the quality in that first year of the model? It goes down. Why does it go down? It goes down because the variation is high, and when the variation is high, the quality goes down. Over time, that car will become more standardized like other cars, and the quality will go up. So everything costs something. This is very important. Anybody who tells you differently is trying to sell you something. Are you going to go radical and big, or are you going to go incremental and small? Now let's turn this around and look at the other continuum. This is what we call the compete, or the blue position. And this is about doing things fast. The markets love these companies. This is General Electric. This is Goldman Sachs. This is Microsoft. This is Procter & Gamble. These are companies that pay revenue on a regular basis. And the reason they do is they're held together by goals. And they love those short-term teams. You'll always know a blue company because they'll have innovation teams named Win Team, Go Team, Strike Force. And they're run by guys named the Hitman and Chainsaw, the Great White Shark. They sound like gangsters, right? So these organizations move very, very quickly into markets, but they're not terribly sustainable. Contrast that with this final position, the collaborate position, which is do things that last. These people are held together by values. Now I want to point something out. If you have younger people in your organization, and millennials, as we sometimes call them, if you have younger people are more yellow, and baby boomers are more blue. So they do a lot of networking, they do a lot of sharing, they collaborate like crazy. They're not necessarily the fastest group in the room, but they hold together. So they're very focused on building that community. They're very focused on building the knowledge that comes out of the community, the culture and the competency that goes with it. Create, control, compete, collaborate. The key, as we will see in the next videos, is how to sync all this up.